All right. Welcome to the Line by Line. My guest is Cordelh, aka Pinder Poet, and aka Caesar Hill. Please check him out. I will provide all the links below. Give him a follow and a subscription. We are analyzing a song called Imagine by the great Beatles, John Lennon. So, Cordelh, why did you pick that song?
I think we were talking about music, and then I wonder if ChatGPT would choose the best song for me based on my profile. So I asked ChatGPT to choose a song for me and picked Imagine, which actually is a pretty good song. I mean, like, I've known it forever. Like, the moment I read Imagine, I knew which song it was talking about. We played the video clip, made you a little bit emotional. It was really cute. And we decided to make a little video on Imagine by John Lennon.
Yes. So thank you. I love that song, and I actually love that in the video. I will provide the link below as well. John and Yoko Ono were playing together. It did make me emotional. It talks about the issues I had been thinking about for quite a long time now. Yeah, perfect. It's both respectful and terrifying how well ChatGPT knows us. It's amazing.
I don't know if we can really say it knows us. I mean, to know, you have to be conscious. I'm not convinced AI is yet really conscious, but you know.
I would like to apologize to all the AI overlords. Of course, you are guys conscious.
Okay.
Okay. So,
Turn me with your style. You think they're gonna nuke me? That would be cute.
yeah, would be cute. Would it?
No, I'm a bomb proof. I'm a bomb proof. I'm like the cockroaches, you know, I survive everything.
Okay, to the honors.
Okay, so I should read John Lennon Imagine songs. It starts with Imagine there's no heaven. It's easy if you try. No hell below us, above us, only sky. Imagine all the people living for today. Yeah, that's basically the first stanza.
And what lines actually scream to you the most?
Well, I think it's interesting because that person, well, you know, John Lennon is telling us to think about something, and that thought, that idea is basically what we can see on a day-to-day life, you know. In contrast to heaven and hell and people deserving to go to heaven or hell and stuff like that. In contrast to that, what do we have is the sky above our head, land beneath our feet, people around us. That's it. Which I think is really interesting because by then we can actually talk about really human beings, humanity as a whole, instead of, like segregate groups and think, those people deserve heaven, those people deserve hell. It's
Yeah.
actually about not judging. I'm just accepting that the world is the world, that there is a sky, that there is a sun that rises and sets, and the moon that goes on one side and the other. And yeah, we can tell ourselves stories about all of that, but in the end, the fact that the sun is rising and setting surpasses all the stories that we tell ourselves about the sun. Uh,
Yeah, it's the idea that because of heaven and hell, people have excused a lot of atrocity. I'm doing it in the name of bringing everybody to heaven eventually someday. So I will like torture all of you right now.
I do think that heaven and hell is symbolic, though, that he's not
Mm,
actually bashing at religion, although, religion in its organized form could be linked with, many other different groups
mhm,
in the sense that it's an organized group. But I think he's actually using that as a symbolism of, not being able to see people in front of you and
mhm.
making a judgment, and then categorizing people in front of you, thinking that they deserve to be punished or they deserve to be, um, hailed or whatever. I don't even know what you call that. Given something better.
Yeah,
Yes.
those are the good people. They will go to heaven, right? And those, the bad people, they will go to hell.
There you
And
go.
imagine that there is no this division and all of those are just people, right?
Yeah, that's it. It's actually, I think, that John Lennon was actually really inspired by the Tao Te Ching
Yeah.
that we were reading a few years back. I think it's, when you
TikTok.
think about the philosophy that he shares, basically, it's pretty much that, accepting what we are,
Mm-hmm.
seeing beyond our own judgment, and accepting then who everybody else is also, like, basic.
That's true. And then they continue. Imagine there is no countries. It isn't hard to do. Nothing to kill or die for. And no religion too. Imagine all the people living life in peace. Okay. And what lines actually scream to you?
I think it's pretty straightforward, like nothing to kill or die for, straight up. I figured that some people would argue that the and no religion too is
Mm-hmm.
shocking, but it's only shocking because people are connected to religion on a personal level. But again, if we looked at religion as an organized group, just part of, any other organized group, and when he says, like, imagine there's no countries, I figured that
Mm-hmm.
all the people that get offended by imagine there is no countries is the people that rely a lot on the concept of countries to identify themselves, which is sort of weird because really a country is an abstract idea. And yes, there is value and worth in cherishing, you know, the place where you're born, the place where your
Yeah.
grandparents lived and stuff like that. But I'm not convinced that there is ever a reason to hurt somebody or hurt yourself on the name of an abstract idea. So yeah, it's a complex idea. But there's nothing to kill or die for. That's the objective in the end, you know. Because if you have no country, if you have no religion, that's what he's saying. You know, if you have no reason to fight, then you won't fight, basically.
I do believe he talks about tribalism here. So if you belong to a tribe, which is either a country or a tribe of certain religion,
Yeah,
um,
a group,
so
basically.
so that group you belong to uh, would be would be let's say self-respecting. Everything they do is correct. Everything is
Yeah,
their ways are their ways. Everybody outside of that group who are doing
self-righteous. That's what he
things
means.
differently, yeah, that are doing things completely differently, become sort of the enemy and the opposite. And it feels to me like he talks about imagine you don't have that division, you don't have to decide what is the opposite of you, let's
What I
say.
think is really interesting with self-righteousness is that
Mm-hmm.
self-righteousness in its purest and its strongest form is
Yeah.
actually the one he's talking about. Like, if you have no reason to kill, then don't kill. That's self-righteous, you know. That's actually really basic self-righteousness. And yet, most people will see self-righteousness as economics, nation, races, to say something, but yeah, stuff like that, you know. When really it's, you know, it's the moment you work along in peace with everybody and with yourself that actually you're the most self-righteous, because you don't need to be self-righteous, you know. You're just walking a righteous path, basically, to say something, you know. It's all symbolic because, again, I don't really believe in religion, so righteousness would mean for me a sense of morality, you know, like a sense of helping others and feeling good for it and not hurting others and not having to regret about hurting others, basically.
Like religion is complicated because I have seen religion as being a unifying force, but at the same time I have seen religion being as a force for evil. So
Um,
it's both somehow at the same time. Like,
it's because I'm not trying to diminish the
mhm,
word of religion, but religion enters in that category of it is the story we tell ourselves that defines us. And that category enters in everything, you know, like if a person identifies themselves as based on nation or stuff like that, suddenly that nation is by basically their identity.
yeah.
And the thing is, when we identify ourselves through a story,
Hmm.
it because of its personal nature, first of all, we get really connected. And the second thing is that basically it's basically hard to face different truths than the one in your group, you know. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm. Yeah, that's why I think it's very complicated. On one side, it's good
Well,
to have the set of rules you follow, right? The set of rules, like here is the rule of our religion.
it's not because we tell ourselves stories that we will act a certain way. You know, we tell ourselves those stories, we identify to those stories. Okay. But then when the moment comes to be in front of reality and we have to do something, it
Yeah.
usually comes as really intuitive. It comes really fast. You have to do something, you do it. And that's beyond just, you know, cultural personality. That's like whatever you are, whatever is your instinct, whatever is your character will push you toward that. It's actually, I would argue, it's a question of character rather than cultural identity. And by that point, if a person does something, whatever it is, let's say they do or do not help, it doesn't matter. After the deed, they will start connecting the dots on how their actions connect with the philosophy, the ideology, the identity, basically, the cultural identity. So, for example, let's say I will do something that's parallel to my identity. There is no difficulty in justifying it. I'm doing this because I'm that. But let's just say I'm doing something opposite to my cultural identity. Suddenly, I might actually try to find justification. I did that because exceptionally, it does fit the better end game or stuff like that. You know?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the part in which religion is sort of complex because it tells us how to be. Okay? And mostly it's positive. But when we do the actions, if we choose a path that's not parallel to what we believe, then chances are we're going to do something wrong. You know, not in the sense that it's wrong with the Bible, it's that it's wrong with our own intuition, it's wrong with our own cultural identity, it's wrong by all those means, and we suddenly find ourselves trying to find a reason on how to make it right. And the whole the whole action is just like, you know, basically a big loss of time. Most people can be okay people by just helping and, you know, being sort of straight with themselves, you know, and in that sense that everybody feels nice when they helpful and everybody feels bad when they hurt. That's like basic human beings, you know. Then obviously there are people that will argue about exceptions and all of that. But in this tale of John Lennon Imagine, he tells us to imagine a place where people don't have reasons to hurt each other. And that's beautiful, you know? That's
Yeah.
actually a beautiful chain of thought. And for that, people need to be natural. You know, they don't need to justify their actions. They don't need to actually hurt because of weird reasons that may or may not coincide with the ideology. You know, they don't have to do weird things. They just have to be helpful. There you go. Basic.
Mm-hmm. It does feel like he precisely mm, names through his lyrics here religion, countries, heaven and hell as the divisive force.
Hmm. I know. But when you think about it,
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure by that point, John Lennon is mingling with the concepts of um, more Asian philosophies, you know, like
Oh yeah.
Buddhism, Tao, stuff like that, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Those are pretty much philosophies. They have a part of it that's sort of religious, but mostly it's philosophical.
True.
It's a totally different approach than, you know, any religion of the book, you know, in the sense the book that covers Judaic, Quranic, or Christian, or all the variants. In the sense that instead of looking for redemption, or for example, looking for forgiveness, or looking for uh, punishment, stuff like that, well, in in those philosophies, you rather have the concept of don't do the mistake before doing it instead of doing it and then saying, I'm sorry, you know? So
Yeah.
it's a different approach.
Mm-hmm.
You may say, I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us and the world will be as one.
Yeah.
I actually believe that there is a lot of us, you know, a lot of people that don't believe in war, don't believe in, you know, hurting others for economical advantages. But, you know,
I think Star Trek actually is example of it.
I think basically most enlightened philosophies about humanism are like that, you know. And I say
Mm-hmm.
humanism in a really wide stuff, you know, like using the basis of enlightened philosophies and extending it to the whole humanity. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Someday you will join us, and the world will be as one.
You believe that too, you know? Yeah,
Mm,
like I've been speaking with a lot of people, and everybody argues that, you know, war never ends. It's a cycle. Um, kingdoms rise, kingdom breaks, and all of that.
mm-hmm.
And yeah, there is an argument for that, you know, that everything that's organized will eventually be dismantled. Like in, you know, like in physics, where they say entropy, I think they talk about.
Yeah.
I do believe that in sociology, there is a form of entropy. However, that said, I'm not convinced about the human thought. I think that a lot of people are still arguing that it's the mind that needs to evolve. And the mind is, it's not something really hard to make evolve, you know. It's just a question of ideas and living by it, spreading them, and that's it, you know.
Mm.
So I believe that actually, eventually, after most worldly issues will be solved in one way or another, humanity will actually hold hands and sing Shambhala or whatever.
I don't know. I think it's it's acceptance of the difference, though.
Mhm.
The world will be as one, but all the difference perspective will be accepted.
Yeah,
So sort of without shadow integration. For example, a person cannot be completely themselves. In order to be completely themselves, people need to integrate their shadow, to know it and accept it, that it exists, it's there.
yeah.
Like just closing their eyes and saying like, no, this doesn't exist, this part of me isn't real. It's a denying reality somehow.
You bring up something really interesting. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
What is it that makes us us? The cultural identity baggage
Mm-hmm.
or really basic instincts? Like if you feel good, you help other people, which makes you a good person. You see what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, I do.
And because like people that are helpful, let's say there are plenty of historical examples, you know, like Second World War, the Schindler List. I don't know if it's a
Mm-hmm.
real story 100%. I've heard it's real, like it's a real story, but I imagine it's more complex than that. But still, you know, somebody took a risk, saved hundreds of people. Stories like that, they are everywhere. There are people in right now in Greece, Italy, and Spain saving refugees when everybody is throwing stones at the refugees and the people saving them. For example,
Oh yeah.
or there are people feeding the poor in refugee camps that we don't even know about, or that are actually helping single mother having their kids. For example, no? I
Mm-hmm.
mean, there are people that are helpful. Being helpful doesn't require a cultural identity. It's not because they Americans or they Muslims or they Catholics or they Cubans or they Russians or whatever that it makes them good. It's because they do what they do that it makes them good. You know, they helping other people, which means that I would argue that that
Mm-hmm.
part, I don't know how to call it, but that part of the identity, that character, is actually more us than the cultural identification. You know? like saying,
Oh
"Oh, I'm
yeah.
American, so I'm a good person, so I'm helping." No, that's
Mm-hmm.
yeah. The person tells himself that story, perhaps, like I'm American, so I'm helping other people, but it's not because of that they're doing it. They're doing it because they have a good heart in the end. I'm
Yeah.
taking American as example. It could have been European, Russian, Chinese. It doesn't matter really. You know, all those are basically dress. I mean, costumes. You know,
No countries. No countries, only people. I get it. Get it.
imagine no possessions. I wonder if you can. No need for greed or hunger. A brotherhood of men. Imagine all the people sharing all the world.
Hmm. Yeah.
What
Imagine
strikes you the most?
imagine all the people sharing all the world. What strikes me the most is the word sharing.
Yeah.
Sharing, not fighting to get their own, but sharing.
Yeah.
And the fact of no possessions. Actually, like that fact that people, oh no, that's mine, and they keep kind of taking stuff and hiding it, and taking stuff and hiding it. And this sharing part, I see it rarely, basically. Like I actually
Well,
weirdly, I rarely also see people helping for no benefit. Let's say they're like helping only if there is something in for that. Like I will help you if that is beneficial to me.
well, there is an argument, I would say, that basically the media in general
Yeah.
is sort of infusing us with the concept of not being helpful, not sharing, and rather owning and gaining in the back of other people. So
Yeah.
I think personally, one of the reasons that they do that is because humans naturally want to share and want to be good. And if we are not constantly bombarded with those ideas, we would not, act like we do in general nowadays in this society. It's basically because we're bombarded with propaganda, really, like a new age propaganda, like a propaganda that's not even directed, because, back in the days we used propaganda for war and stuff like that. But nowadays, it's just like propaganda based on economics, basically, which leads to, like, yeah, basically people fighting for their own and not people fighting for everybody, which is really sad, actually. Yeah.
I remember South Park, and there were riots screaming, "They took our jobs! They took our jobs! They took our jobs!" Like it's they, that word they, and they took something from us. It's like this tool for hate.
Mhm.
It's some they that take something from us, but like imagine there is no possessions, so they cannot take it and you actually share it. Oh, there is shit ton of job, by the way, guys, like come in and like here we share the jobs with you. And that's the thing. Imagine that world where people actually share jobs.
Mm.
It would be so awesome. Here is my job, let me share it. By the way, like I have 9 to 5, but
There
like
is
you can take
actually
3 hours of that.
there is actually a concept like that in philosophy in which
Mhm.
well, an argument about society could be better if people swap job, so they would be responsibilized by, like sometimes being cops, sometimes being um, politicians, sometimes being the guy that repairs the street, and sometimes teaching, which
Oh
is
yeah.
really interesting. The only issue I have with it is that
Incompetence.
yeah, yeah, that but even more than that, bias. Because
Oh,
we are a very, very bias-based society at this moment, which
true.
means that judging people would probably be done through bias, which would be horrible because I believe that we are already sort of doing it, but it would be even more, when really we are aiming to something better. I mean, I do find it interesting that he does say, imagine no possessions,
Hmm.
and that he got, if I can say, yeah, okay, I don't know how to say it. Well,
Yes,
he got, yeah, he is
he
coming.
got shot.
He got shot. He got shot.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah. Pum, pum, pum. So, like this is, I don't believe he was a communist, but
Was a
the
socialist.
yeah,
You
but the
know?
thing is when you mingle with those ideas
Hmm.
on a philosophical level, it doesn't even need to be like on a material level.
Hmm.
People will judge you. You know, that's the thing that I know.
I
Like
mean,
the moment you say, imagine no possession, so you have no reason to be jealous, people are like, oh, communist, red flag.
no, he's judging us. He's judging our right to possession. We have the right to have possessions. How dare he to judge
Pretty
us?
much. Yeah, pretty much. When really it's a process, because if you imagine you have no possession, then you can wonder if you can, no need for greed or hunger. And I agree, if you have no possession, chances are you don't have to worry about greed, and chances are you wouldn't have to worry about hunger. Because ultimately the
Mhm.
truth is that, for example, we produce enough food worldwide to feed everybody, and we have the potential to actually feed everybody with the world we have,
Mhm.
but we do mismanagement because of economical reasons. You know,
Oh yeah.
countries like some countries in South America that, for example, produce coffee, instead of producing enough food for their own people, are producing coffee for basically people that will have a couple of drinks and then throw it in the sink, you know, or with just abuse of it, because coffee is actually a pretty
Mhm.
bad drug and a lot of people are into it. Just saying.
Everybody's into it. I don't know
I love
people who
coffee, but
don't
yeah,
love coffee.
I love
Uh,
coffee, but
yeah, people, if you don't love coffee, write it in the comments.
yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah. Mm. Possessions and the wars started because people need to earn. Like war is very lucrative. I actually heard a lot that wars are being sponsored by money.
Well, again, it's interesting because I'm not convinced that conflict per se, like, for example, if you look at American indigenous people, like Native American, for example, um, they had conflicts between tribes. They even had sort of wars, like people ritualistically made attacks seasonally on their neighbors and actually got married with the woman they kidnapped, or there were rituals about that, like if the guy manages to kidnap her, then they get to marry her or stuff like that. And the thing is, it was organized but on a way smaller scale. And when you look at the impact it had on the societies of that time, it meant that, for example, people didn't have kids with their cousins, basically. That they didn't go inbred in the little village in the mountain, for example. So there is something positive about it, about the struggle. If it's not organized into a manslaughter field, battlefield. No, I'm not convinced that, for example, a tribe committed genocide on another tribe. back in those days, you know. Like, for example, I'm not convinced either that they would burn the entire forest just out of spite for the neighboring tribe, you know. What they did is like having sacrifices, like for example, the Aztecs and stuff like
Oh,
that, you know. When you look at it, and even the Aztecs, they already had armies that were way more organized than the small civilizations that were around. So I would argue that actually it's struggle is, you know, it's part of humanity. It's nicer to avoid it, you know, because who wants to struggle, basically? But you can't always avoid it, you know.
I
Now,
get that.
organized war, that's actually the economics of making money on perhaps a flaw of humanity or something that's necessary to humanity. So yeah, it's a weird concept. Personally, it's all about, I think it's a lot of the issues come from the organizations that we have behind the organism that take care of this world.
Hmm. I understand. So basically, it's not only the possessions, let's say, but the adherence to a tribe. So he names the kind of the root of all the tribalism here, which would be countries. So you adhere to that country. You have to, like, you can enlarge, expand your country by attacking another country. So basically that religion, you will expand your religion by attacking another religion, like, and getting their people to your religion. And possessions, I guess, like, you take the wealth and you concentrate it in your tribe or in
Yeah.
mm. So, and then there is that thing where his ideas are so radical. Like, I do remember he had this campaign where he and Yoko Ono glued everywhere posters, "The war is over," in many languages. When I seen it uh, during the ongoing war right now in the country I grew up in, I it made me cry.
Mm.
Before that, I felt like, well, the war is war. That's nice. It's kind of this romantic. But the moment I am personally affected by war, that message made me cry. The fact that the war is over, and then I understand that it isn't. Mm. But it's nice. It kind of, I felt grateful that this campaign existed. Somebody tried, I think Yoko Ono tried to post it again on Twitter,
Mhm.
and it stuck for, like, I don't know, 2 days, and
Yeah,
then a crowd of Twitter moved on to some uh,
something else.
beef between Andrew Tate and somebody else, I think. So it was,
No, we don't need to propagate
shut
his name.
out.
No, we don't need to give any shout out. Yeah, yeah, we don't
Yeah,
need
some, yeah. If you want, guys, want to just look
that.
up the beef between Andrew Tate and Greta. Greta.
They actually had a beef.
Yes.
Isn't that
Uh,
illegal? Isn't she underage? Isn't she
she's
under?
underage, but she had a beef with Andrew Tate. She,
Wow,
yes, yes.
that sounds very illegal somehow.
Uh, after I will tell you all about it off the recording.
Yeah.
Okay.
What does touch me also is
Mhm.
no need for greed or hunger. Because when you really think about it,
Oh.
this world, most war are fought about hunger and greed. Hunger for the poor, greed for the rich, basically. You know, and with those two concepts, you encompass actually the main motivations to hurt people. You know, I would argue that there is a better justification for poor people to fight
Mhm.
when they hungry. It's still wrong, but you know, it's perhaps a lot of people don't realize that. But any living being, when it's hungry, gets a reflex, intuitive stuff that wakes up in his head and tells him, I'm hungry, I need to go hunt. That's why, for example, little kids, when you don't feed them, they start crying and throwing stuff around. That's why basically anybody gets really pissed off. even nowadays.
I
You
mean,
know,
yeah.
like that's why when I'm hungry, I actually get violent. I know, not violent in the sense, physically, but verbally.
I get physically violent actually, so I can admit it.
No, no, I'm ready to go in the woods and find myself a boar and then hunt it, cook it, and eat it. That's
Yeah.
my state of mind. If I'm not hungry, I'm like the freaking lion. I'm like boo, 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 chilling under the sun for 24 hours.
Oh yeah, that idea that if people actually have the necessity
Mhm.
that they need to obtain the
Yeah,
basic needs, it's a motivation, and it's a motivation that they can get by all means necessary, including violence. But if people don't have that issue, basic needs like
then it's great.
medical assistant, hunger,
Yeah, if you don't.
accommodation, like dignity, like basic human dignity is provided,
Mhm.
there will be way less violence.
Oh yeah, I'm sure
At
that
least
actually.
that's the proposition of the song. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, if
Okay.
all needs are met, there's no reason to complain about it. You know?
Oh yeah. Cordelh, thank you so much for bringing that song. It was an emotional roller coaster for me.
No.
I love John Lennon and Yoko Ono, and actually all the Beatles, even Ringo Starr. Shut up. And guys, please check out all the links below. Subscribe to Cordel's YouTube channel and enjoy the gifts of our today's sponsor, which is Cordelh. Do you know what it is?
Love?
Free time
Oh,
and love.
freedom.
Free time. Free
Oh,
time
free
and
time.
love.
Free time with love.
Yes.
Okay. I'll
Mhm.
play a forward song.
Thank you. Bye. So, Cordelh, imagine no possessions.
Should I
A
read?
one,